I'm Mike.
I'm Sam. Let's get into it.
With the first pick in the 2020 draft, the Cincinnati Bengals select Joe Burrow, quarterback, LSU.
Welcome to episode 8 of Mike and Sam Sports. Today we're going to talk about pretty much just the NFL draft. So I would say the whole episode because not much going on else in sports. So first we're just going to go into our overall takeaways from the draft. And then after we do our takeaways, we're going to talk about each individual pick and then talk about the second round and the third round and more of the popular names that weren't picked. So without further ado, let's get into it. So Michael, what are your biggest takeaways from the draft this year?
My very first biggest takeaway of this draft is that more than ever, right now, it's a passing league. 4 quarterbacks were selected in the first round, 6 wide receivers, 6 linemen, 5 of which were tackles, which tackles are supposed to help out the pass game more than the run game, more than anything else. 6 cornerbacks were drafted. So that's more than ever at positions that are really contributed to helping out the passing game or helping out to stop the passing game. Only 1 running back was selected, and that was with the 32nd pick, with Hilaire going to the Kansas City Chiefs. And we even saw this offseason with the rushing leading king, led his team to the playoffs, Derrick Henry. He didn't even get a new contract. So more than ever right now, it's a passing league. You even see a draft that is so in-depth with its wide receivers. Still 6 were drafted in the first round. So that's probably my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, I think just running backs are pretty expendable with their careers, so I think teams really focus on passing, and just more. It's been popularized over the years. But also, my biggest takeaway is I think, considering the circumstances, I think they did a pretty good job with all the setups and everything.
They did.
I watched ABC personally. I think I like what they do on ABC with the college game day crew rather than watching like Trey Wingo on ESPN. And
yeah, me too.
I didn't even watch NFL Network, but I like how on ABC they went into their college background. At times they did struggle like talking over each other, but I think that's just the name of the game with this having to do it on like Zoom or whatever aspect they had to do it on.
Yeah, I think what the NFL did and what the media did is that they set the bar so low for the draft. They kind of put out there, oh, there's going to be so many technical difficulties. There's going to be glitches. Somebody might hack it. And in reality, it was completely fine. They set the bar very low. They met the bar and exceeded it pretty easily. So really good job to the people who set up the draft, the IT people at all the GM's houses and the commissioner's house and the coaches' houses. So they did a really good job with that. I like watching ABC and kind of the game day more than I do ESPN and Golic or Wingo, because he kind of gets into the personality and who the players are as people. And I do like seeing that. And I was kind of switching back and forth, but I like seeing a breakdown of the player more. So I agree with that.
Yeah. I don't know. The online draft made Roger Goodell more despisable with some of his antics.
Yeah.
Like
he was trying to pump up the fan base every single pick. It was funny.
Unenthusiastic thing ever. He's like, come on, please, Jared.
Don't boo me.
And then like the booing thing. I know that was so annoying to me too. Let's hear. I love the booze.
Yeah, he was pulling the classic.
I would booze too if I was making that type of money.
Yeah.
But they did a good job. I liked going to the team's houses and the players' houses and seeing like their reaction the best they could.
Yeah, I love Mike Vrabel. Somebody was in the bathroom in the background of his pick. I don't even know how that's possible. I feel like he kind of wanted that to be there because he had all of his kids dressed up in like Halloween costumes too. So I think the draft was just a big meme to him. We had Henry Ruggs have an Old Spice robe on when he got drafted. That was awesome. Gotta love that. I know a lot of players are getting sponsored by Old Spice right now. I don't know why, but
yeah, but overall, I mean, there wasn't that much surprising picks in this draft. I think it was pretty like held to the standard that a lot of mock drafts were crafted. Some surprise, but overall, I think that it was a a good draft. I really enjoyed watching it.
Yeah, that's another huge takeaway. There's an NFL GM, an anonymous one, who said, wow, all these mock drafts are wrong. You guys are going to be shocked on draft day. I think that's completely wrong. I think a lot of the picks, I think even the top 5 picks were exactly how we really thought they would be. There's so many smoke screens. Oh, the Dolphins might not take Tua, all this stuff. But at the end of the day, it's really what we thought would happen if we looked past all the smoke screens that these NFL teams throw out. So it was a pretty predictable draft in that sense. Everybody was kind of waiting for fireworks to be lit off. And I think that did happen around the 26th pick, I believe it was, with the Green Bay Packers. But we'll get into that a little bit later.
And also, I don't know if I just never noticed before. I feel like for the first half of the draft, they were flying through their picks. Like, usually when it's a live draft, it's like they take their sweet time. But this one, I feel like it was a minute into when they're on the clock and the pick was already in.
Yeah, they were really fast with that. I thought the opposite would happen, but I think most teams really over-prepared for this draft, which was great to see. So they already had their selection. Even if their second and third guy was already selected, they already had who they were going to take. I think a lot of teams are teetering with the idea of a trade, but I think with the circumstances, they felt pretty comfortable picking at where they're picking.
Yeah. So you want to go into each pick now?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So with the first overall pick, the Cincinnati Bengals obviously picked Joe Burrow. Not much of a surprise at all. He was going to be the first overall pick since he won the national championship. I mean, I really hope that I really like Joe Burrow, so I hope that he can have a successful career and lead the Bengals to a more concrete pathway rather than having to be an abysmal franchise for continuous years.
Yeah, not much to talk about here. I think he'll have his ups and downs as the Cincinnati Bengals will as a whole, and not only his first season, but his first couple of seasons. You have the Ravens in their division, very, very good team, one of the best teams in the AFC. You have the Steelers, who had a really shaky quarterback room last year and still almost made the playoffs, so the Steelers are still really good. You have the Browns, who I know they're way overhyped last season, but they're still competitive, so you're looking at the Bengals with Joe Burrow entering this division as the 4th best team. So it's going to be interesting what the Bengals do to try to retool their roster around a young Joe Burrow. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with Andy Dalton as well.
Yeah, I think maybe I can see them sitting Joe Burrow for like maybe half the year or something. But I think Joe Burrow's lucky to have like someone like AJ Green on the roster.
Yeah.
Really build a connection. I know a young Peyton. He had Marvin Harrison on the Colts, so he was able to get that connection going early. I know Peyton had a really rough rookie year. He set the all-time interception record for a rookie, but I think Joe can definitely have a connection with AJ Green for the future of both their careers.
Yeah, for a number 1 pick, they don't have that bad of a roster around him in terms of offensive weapons. I know they have a really bad offensive line. That defense is pretty abysmal, but they have some decent wide receiver talent, and they have Joe Mixon, who's a good running back as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what Joe Burrow does in Cincinnati.
Yep, I'm excited. So with the second overall pick, the Washington Redskins, another no surprise, they picked Chase Young. I think he was the best player in the draft, arguably. I think really solidifying that front seven for the Redskins defense, that can really help them in a lot of games. It can get the opposing team's offense off the field and get their offense, the Redskins offense, onto the field more and more opportunities to score the ball. So I think if you have a great defense, it can really help your offense.
Yeah, that's so important. The Redskins defense were just constantly on the field last year. A part of that was because of their offense, but it's definitely going to help out having Chase Young solidify that defense. People say he's the best edge prospect they've ever evaluated. He was the first ranked player in the draft. He's a really, really good player. The Redskins allowed the 27th most yards allowed last season and points. So they definitely needed another defender to help out that defense. So you can't go wrong with the best player in the draft.
I mean, I think it was an easy pick for them. Just
Yeah.
simple. So with the third overall pick, the Detroit Lions selected, I'll say the second Buckeye in a row, if you count Joe Burrow as maybe half a Buckeye, half an Ohio State one. So, pretty good for Ohio State right there. And Jeff Okudah, I think it was an interesting pick for the Lions because they pretty much just traded Darius Slay just to pick Okudah, which is kind of an interesting move. I think personally it would have been better for the Lions to draft Derrick Brown. I think he would have helped their team out a little more.
Yeah.
But Okudah's also he's a great player, so they were looking at one of the trying to get the best player available.
Yeah, it's one of those instances where love the player, don't like the pick. I really like Jeff Okudah. He can be Jalen Ramsey in 2 years, and I still don't really like this pick because I just don't see how this makes the Lions better.
Yeah.
I know they did just lose Darius Slay, and now they're replacing him with a really good cornerback. But again, like I said in the pre-draft, Jeff Okudah was projected to go this number 3 overall. And I did say I just see the Lions being stagnant with this pick. So we'll see. I hope Jeff Okudah does really good on the Lions, which I do believe he is going to be, but we'll see.
Yeah. So with the next pick in the NFL draft, the New York Giants picked an offensive tackle, Andrew Thomas from Georgia. Personally, I don't like this pick for the Giants. I think that there were better tackles available.
Yeah.
You have someone like Jedrick Wills, Mekhi Becton, Tristan Wirfs. And even if the Giants knew that this was their guy, he wasn't high on a lot of teams or a lot of mock drafts, so they probably could have traded back.
Yeah.
In the NFL draft, they could have got like a late round pick and still got the guy they wanted.
Yeah, no, very good point. He was the 4th ranked tackle going into this draft overall. It was kind of a consensus that he wasn't even the top 3 offensive line prospects in this draft. Now, I think more than any team in the league, the Giants have a really gaping hole at that right tackle position. So that's another obvious pick. It was kind of obvious that the Giants were going to go tackle here. I know a lot of people had Isaiah Simmons going 4th overall, but they really needed to fill this need. They need to protect Daniel Jones, and more arguably just as important, they need to protect Saquon Barkley as well. So I really like them getting a tackle, but again, Andrew Thomas, I think, is projected to be the most NFL-ready tackle right now, but doesn't have the highest ceiling necessarily. So we'll see how he does in Big Blue. They don't have the best track record with picking offensive line talent. So definitely fills a position of need, but I definitely think they should have traded down and still gotten their guy, which they really could have done.
I just think that Andrew Thomas is more of a bruiser. He's not really like the new style athletic lineman. So I don't know if he's really that adaptable to the NFL today. Because you need someone who's fast at the line. When you have someone like Saquon Barkley at running back who's going to make a lot of fast plays, you need a lineman that's going to be able to run down the majority of the field with him. I just don't like that for the Giants.
Yeah, it's a good point. The Giants are going to be very screen-centric too. I know they were last year with not only Saquon Barkley, but Wayne Gallman, Sterling Shepard. So they love running those screen plays, but Andrew Thomas, again, not the most athletic tackle. So he's definitely not going to help with that. He's kind of the prototypical 6'5", 315 tackle in the NFL, but not the new age, really fast, quick, elusive guy.
So with the 5th overall pick, not much of a surprise here. The Dolphins picked Tua. I mean, and also, side note, Roger Goodell just destroyed Tua's name when he tried to pronounce it. It was embarrassing to watch, but not much of a surprise here. I saw some reports, like you said earlier, that the Dolphins might get Herbert, but I think the Dolphins really fell in love with Tua. I know I read an article that before the shutdown and like flights were shut down, they tried to go to get Tua to Miami or fly to Tua and work him out to see him live and in person, which really would have helped some stuff. But because of the circumstances, they couldn't. But I think they found their guy that they like. I don't know about his career. I'm not that big high on Tua, but I think the Dolphins are high on him.
Yeah, I think all the smoke screens before the draft that the Dolphins weren't going to take Tua with that number 5 pick were just the Dolphins really nervous that a team were going to trade up into the draft before number 5 to try to get Tua. I know a trade fell through draft night where the Dolphins would acquire the number 3 pick and the Lions would get the number 5 pick, and that was just kind of extra insurance for Tua to land with the Dolphins. I know that trade fell through. I think the Lions were asking for a little bit too much, but great for the Dolphins getting their guy and being able to sit on their pick and get their guy. It's going to be really interesting to see when does Tua start and when does Tua play, because not only do they have Ryan Fitzpatrick, who I think the Dolphins do like, but they also have Josh Rosen, who I don't think the Dolphins like. I think last year they kind of took a flyer with a second-round pick on Josh Rosen, trading him or getting him via trade from the Cardinals. So I think they kind of evaluated him last year, said, this isn't our guy. And rumor has it the Dolphins have had scouts, NFL scouts, at every single Alabama game for the last year. So this wasn't really a surprise. This has been in the works. Tank for Tua was a thing so early on in the season last year. So Dolphins got their guy. Really good for him. This is a really good situation for Tua to get into too, because I don't think he's going to be expected to play right away. I think they'll try to ease him into it. So loves that warm weather. From Hawaii, played in Alabama. He's going to play in Miami now. So that's really good.
Yeah, I don't think they want to rush him in with that hip injury. I think that he rides the bench for the majority of his rookie year just to get healthy and learn the ways of the NFL.
Yep.
So with the 6th overall pick, the LA Chargers select Justin Herbert. Personally, to me, not much of a surprise. I think they need a quarterback desperately. I don't know if you can really have Tyrod for the whole season. You saw the Browns went with him a couple years ago, but I don't know how many games off the top of my head that he played, but they put Baker in pretty quickly after a slow start. But I think Herbert, I don't know about his skill set, but the Chargers really needed a potential franchise quarterback, and they think that they got it here with Herbert.
Yeah, and this is another quarterback where, going off of Tua, Justin Herbert lands in the ideal situation for him. New city, really new rebranding of the organization. They're looking for that new franchise quarterback. They have a quarterback who I know the GM and the coach really, really like in Tyrod Taylor. They've kind of alluded to not only will they want Tyrod Taylor to be their starting quarterback next year, but if he does good this year, he can potentially be the starter next year as well. So Herbert is going to go in. He's going to be able to really clean up his game. He's not going to have the pressure of starting immediately. It could be similar to a Baker Mayfield situation where you had Tyrod Taylor as the starter. They want Tyrod as the starter, but he struggles in the offense, and the team as a whole is kind of stagnate around him. So then they have Herbert go in. I could see a similar situation happening with Herbert next season, but every year in the draft, I find it very interesting. There's really no bad pick in the first round because all these players are projected to be first-round picks. It's very rare where right away a player gets picked and a lot of people are like, ooh, that's a bad pick. I think the last example I could think of that was when the Giants drafted Eli Apple a couple years ago. I think right when the Giants drafted him, everyone was like, wow, that's a big reach. He's not going to be that good. So I think out of any player in the first round, I think you could say that about Justin Herbert. A lot of people, I know via ESPN, he was the 4th-ranked quarterback. He was the 4th-ranked quarterback for me too, actually. So there's a lot of consistency issues with Justin Herbert, and there's a big concern and a big red flag that in his 3 years of being the starting quarterback at Oregon, he didn't really improve too much. So there's a lot of red flags about Justin Herbert, but he's not going to be thrusted into the starting position. So he's going to be in a good opportunity to sit and learn, and we'll see how Justin Herbert does.
Yeah, I think sitting behind Tyrod and learning from the coaching staff, I think that will really help him polish his game up a lot because he's more or less of a project and he has a lot of raw talent there. So I think he needs to get that NFL coaching.
Yep.
So with the 7th overall pick, the Carolina Panthers select Derek Brown. I think the Panthers' mindset here was best available player, which necessarily Brown wasn't the best available player. You had Isaiah Simmons around too, but I think the Panthers probably thought this was more of a glaring need for them instead of a linebacker. They might want rushing the quarterback is more of a hankering need for the team, which I think is a good pick. Derek Brown is a great player. He's athletic. He's fast. He can bull rush the line too. So I think it's really a great pick for the Panthers.
Yeah, it is. With the absence of Luke Kuechly now, they really need a player who is going to help out in the run defensive game. So in that aspect, I think Derek Brown is a great pick, and he was for sure the right player. And this was the first pick where people didn't really know what was going to happen. And this really contributed to Isaiah Simmons falling to that 8 spot, which we'll get into in a minute. But another pretty predictable pick, really good run stopper, and he's going to be really good for the Panthers in that new Matt Rule rebranded Panthers team.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the Panthers. Matt Rule, I'm excited to see what he does. He turned Temple around. He turned Baylor around. And I think he's an outstanding coach.
Yeah, me too. It's one of my favorite storylines going into the NFL next season. That Panthers team, how they're going to look. Are they going to be in rebuild mode next year, or are they going to try to win games in that really competitive division they're in now? So we'll see.
So with the number 8 overall pick, your Arizona Cardinals select Isaiah Simmons. I think this is just one of the best picks in the draft. Such a steal. I can't believe he dropped this far, but I think it's an outstanding pick for the Cardinals.
Yeah, I'm ecstatic. Once I saw Isaiah Simmons fall to number 8, I said, you know what? We need an offensive lineman so bad. But when Isaiah Simmons falls to your lap at number 8, one of the best players in the draft, you got to get him. Isaiah Simmons is so versatile. He's so great. I have one concern about Isaiah Simmons going to the Arizona Cardinals, and that isn't Isaiah Simmons. That's the Arizona Cardinals. They don't have the best track record of picking these versatile players and really making it work with them. Last player I can think of who is similar to Isaiah Simmons that the Cardinals picked was Hassan Reddick not too long ago. He was kind of a hybrid player, could play all over the field, and they stuck him at middle linebacker, didn't work. They stuck him at outside linebacker, didn't really work. So if they try to stick Isaiah Simmons to one position and say, hey, go play this one position, I think he could still be a really good player, but that'd be a disservice to just how great of a versatile player he is. I saw Steve Keim actually talking about Isaiah Simmons today, and he said, we're going to let him play wherever he wants, and we're just going to unleash him. So I love to hear that. I really hope their defense gets a little more creative next year under Vance Joseph. They had one of the worst defenses last year in the league. They ranked dead last in total defense last year. So Isaiah Simmons was absolutely a need for the Cardinals. Love this pick, one of the steals of the draft. And I'm really excited for Isaiah Simmons to be a Cardinal.
Yeah, I really like how they're building up the roster under Cliff Kingsbury. I think that under the Cliff Kingsbury team, the Cardinals, they're going to understand Isaiah Simmons more, and they're going to know that he needs to play multiple positions and not be stagnant at one position. So I think that they're on, and like what the owner said, or is the owner GM? Steve Keim. GM, yeah. I think they understand that he needs to play a lot of positions in order to be successful and not just stay at one position.
Yeah, one more point about the Isaiah Simmons. That's a really good point you made. It's really helpful that now the Cardinals have a young coach coming right off of a college career. He understands the college game and that players are fluid and they're versatile and which position they play. So that's really going to help out a lot. And I saw Isaiah Simmons say one thing he really wants to improve on, and one thing he's really excited about to going to an NFL team in general is learning pass rush moves, because he didn't really get to dabble in that too much. So going to a team with Chandler Jones, that's going to be awesome for him. He's going to get much better. So I'm really excited for Isaiah Simmons and the Cardinals.
That's a great pick. So with the 9th overall pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars select C.J. Henderson out of Florida. I mean, the Jaguars, their whole defense that made the AFC Championship a couple years ago completely fell apart.
Yep.
Lost Ramsey, they lost Boye. So I think they're trying to fill that hole at cornerback again. I mean, I think it's a great pick. They kind of needed help on the defense since they lost everybody But I could have saw them picking a lineman here to protect Gardner because he was pressed a lot and he would have to evade the pocket a lot. I mean, it was either, I think, a defensive player, specifically cornerback, or a lineman, so you can't really complain with this pick that much.
Yeah, I think you see 2 picks in a row, a team with young quarterback, glaring need at offensive line, but both Gardner Minshew and Kyler Murray are both very versatile and very shifty and elusive in that pocket. So them less so than other quarterbacks, they need to be protected. So I like them picking a non-lineman here, but again, with the Lions pick, it's another example where love the player, don't really like the pick. I just see, again, the Jaguars being stagnant with this pick. They get CJ Henderson, but then why did you just release Jalen Ramsey trade away Jalen Ramsey and then ship off AJ Boye as well? I don't really see the Jaguars getting better in an immediate fashion, but if CJ Henderson, who I do think was the second best corner in this draft, if he could start to slowly build up that defense again, that would be a really good pick.
Yeah, I think they're kind of just stuck in their old ways. They still have Doug Marrone as the head coach. So I think that if it was a different coach, it might have been a different pick. I think Doug Marrone's still kind of stuck with his old mindset.
Yeah, definitely.
So the 10th overall pick, the Cleveland Browns select Jedrick Wills, tackle out of Alabama. I think this is a really good pick. This was a pretty big glaring problem for the Cleveland Browns. Baker was sacked a lot, hit a lot. He had to throw the ball early. I think once they solidify that offensive line, I think they can make great improvements with the team. They have a pretty great roster already, but I think with this offensive lineman need that they filled that hole, I think they might make the playoffs, even though they're in a pretty tough division.
Yeah, really love this pick. I think a common trend you're going to start to see is teams either have the mindset of picking the best player available, or teams end up having the mindset of pick the position of need. So that really falls in place where teams get the guy they really want. So I don't even think the Browns thought that Jedrick Wills was going to be there at 10, but then their number 1 lineman, I'm sure, on their board and our boards too, were going to fall to them. So that's a great pick. Jedrick Wills is pretty athletic, so he's really going to help out not only Baker Mayfield, who has kind of a bad habit of holding on to the ball too much and too long. So that's really good that they got that tackle to help him with that. But not only that, they have really athletic, really fast, shifty running backs in Nick Chubb, who's more of a bruiser as well, and Kareem Hunt, who could lower down his shoulder too. So he's not only going to help the pass game, but he's going to help the screen game out as well. So I really like that Jedrick Wills pick.
Yeah. So with the 11th pick, the New York Jets select Mekhi Becton, tackle out of Louisville. I think this is an outstanding pick. I'm really high on Mekhi Becton. He's a super athletic, super big, super fast, super strong for someone his size. They needed that anchor to protect Sam Darnold for the foreseeable future, and I really love this pick. I know a lot of people are saying CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy, but I think lineman was a glaring need for them, and they really filled that hole.
Yeah, it's so important to help out Sam Darnold. Not only help out Sam Darnold, but help out Le'Veon Bell. I mean, the amount of times where he would take the handoff and he was hit right away. It's way too many times for a running back. You're paying so much money. And one of the best running backs in the league, for that matter, who really flew under the radar because of that really bad offensive line for the Jets. Now, there is a bit of a question. Mekhi Becton is so good, so big, and so athletic, but he's a bit raw. So there's a bit of a question where could the Jets develop him? So I think that is something to look at. But again, I think Mekhi Becton is going to be a really good pick for the Jets.
Yeah, and I think the Jets, since they needed a wide receiver, I think they understood that there's a lot of depth with the wide receiver position in this year's draft. So they know they can get a solid one later in the draft with Denzel Mims, and even T. Higgins fell to the second round. So who knows? They might be able to get him as well.
Yep.
So with the 12th pick, the Las Vegas Raiders select Henry Ruggs of Alabama, and I think this is the typical Raiders pick. The ghost of Al Davis. He likes the fast wide receivers, and this is I think this is a really good pick. He's I think he flew under the radar of a lot. I shouldn't say that he flew under the radar because he's a great player. He flew under the radar of the standard set by this year's wide receiver class because of CD and Jerry Jeudy. I think he's really good, and I think this is a great pick for the Raiders to get someone who is tough, who can catch the ball well, who has great hands for Derek Carr, who has a lot of drop balls in the past.
Yeah, I love them living on the legacy of Mark Davis, who his draft board would basically just rank players by their 40 times, and he would just select the 40 times off the board. Mark Davis up in heaven is loving this Henry Ruggs pick. Al Davis. Mark Davis is his son with the weird bowl cut. Yeah. Not in heaven yet. Mark Davis loves this pick as well, though, as his dad would. Henry Ruggs is such an explosive player, and John Gruden and Mike Mayock have a really good imagination in terms of really skilled, fast players. So I really like this Henry Ruggs pick. A bit of a surprise that he was the number one wide receiver off the draft board, but at the same time, it wasn't. You had Henry Ruggs saying that not only the Raiders were calling him a lot, but the Broncos were and the 49ers were, who were picking pretty soon after, we will see. So not that big of a surprise that Henry Ruggs went. Not necessarily the best wide receiver in this draft class, in my opinion, but if you have a really, really good offensive system, he could be the most explosive and the most game changer one out of them all. So good pick by the Raiders.
Yeah, I love this pick for the Raiders. So with the 13th pick, originally the Colts pick, and then traded to the 49ers, and now the Buccaneers. Buccaneers select Tristan Wirfs, tackle out of Iowa. I think this is a really good pick. He's going to be someone to protect Brady for however long Brady's going to be in Tampa Bay, 2, 3, 4 years. I think the Buccaneers are really building up their team. They're making great moves for the future of their franchise, and I think they're going to be one of the best teams in the NFC for next year. I think since they fixed this offensive lineman need, I think later in the draft they really need to hone in on defense because their defense was pretty bad last year. But I think this is a really outstanding move.
Yeah, fantastic pick. I can't imagine going to a better spot for Tristan Wirfs than the Buccaneers. He's going to go into that locker room with Bruce Arians, with Tom Brady, with Rob Gronkowski now. That's going to be not only such a fun environment for him, but such an intense and really high pedigree environment too. You have Bruce Arians, really good coach. He has a really good track history. I believe he's won at least 2 Coach of the Years. Obviously, Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski, I don't even have to get into their legacy and pedigree. But, I mean, great move by the Buccaneers. They're in win-now mode. They need to protect their old quarterback who is not mobile in the pocket whatsoever. We saw the teams with win-now mode windows and old quarterbacks, and the Buccaneers and the Saints pick linemen. So really smart for them. Can't go wrong there.
Yep. So with 14th pick, kind of a flip-flop between the Buccaneers and the 49ers. The 49ers, picked Javon Kinlaw, D-tackle to South Carolina. I think this is a really good move, a good pick and a good move for the 49ers. So they signed DeForest Buckner to a massive deal, as 4 years, $84 million contract. And then they instantly ship him off the next day. So they trade an All-Pro, and then they pick could be an All-Pro in the future now he's on his rookie deal for 4 years, 5 years. So I think it's a really good move by John Lynch. I know when the 49ers hired him, me and you were kind of on them for picking John Lynch because of his ability to be a GM, but he's making great moves, and I think this is a great pick.
Yeah, this honestly is probably my favorite pick in the entire first round. It's basically just a salary dump. You get DeForest Buckner, who he's an all-pro talent. He made an all-pro team, but I think he's borderline all-pro from year to year. I think the Colts went out and got their guy. I think he's a tiny bit overpaid, but that's what free agency is. The team that pays the player the highest gets them, so they're usually a tiny bit overpaid. So going back to the 49ers, Javon Kinlaw, he's such a good player. He's going to be such a presence on that already fantastic defensive line. You just shored him up for a couple of years. You don't have to pay him when you have other guys on your defensive line, your defense, and your team in general that you're going to have to pay very soon. You have Kinlaw on not only a rookie deal, but a rookie deal that isn't top 10. And guarantee money really falls off once it's not a top 10 pick. So really good pick by the 49ers. Kinlaw fell to them. I think they knew that the Buccaneers needed to go lineman, so they were really comfortable with trading that pick. Another example of a player really high on their board. I wouldn't be surprised if Kinlaw was the 49ers' number one prospect on their big board, and they fell all the way to 14, so that's really good for the 49ers.
With the 15th pick, the Denver Broncos select Jerry Jeudy. I don't think the Broncos really expected Jeudy to be around at 15. You know, you saw the Jets and the Raiders with a lot of analysts saying that they will pick a wide receiver. But I think this is a really good move for the Broncos are really beefing up their offense around Drew Lock, their young quarterback. And I think he's a really good wide receiver to pair up with someone like Courtland Sutton, who is like kind of that more powerful wide receiver, and Jerry Jeudy is the more quick guy. So I think it's a great combination.
Yeah, the Broncos are really quickly building up that offense. Not only did they have Philip Lindsay, who is undrafted, but they just brought in Melvin Gordon. They're trying to get that offensive line to be better, which isn't even bad right now. They drafted Drew Lock next year, who's going to be their franchise quarterback going into the future. We'll see how good Drew Lock is. We had a very small sample size of him. I know a lot of Broncos fans and a lot of people in general are very excited about what Drew Lock could do. And Jerry Jeudy only adds to that. He's such a great route runner. He has such great separation. So even if your quarterback isn't the best with timing or accuracy, he's so good at getting open to the point where he can still make that catch. So I really like this pick by the Broncos. Another example of a player falling right to their lap. So they really wanted a wide receiver, didn't know if any of the top three guys were going to be there. Probably their number one wide receiver on their board fell to them. So great pick by the Broncos.
So with the 16th pick, the Atlanta Falcons select A.J. Terrell, cornerback out of Clemson. I think this pick, it's kind of similar to the Giants. I think the Falcons might have been able to trade back, even out of the first round, and still have got this guy. He's good, but a lot of teams weren't high on him on their big boards. But I think it's a good pick for the Falcons, considering their offense is pretty set in stone. But I think they really need to fix their defense, solidify that in order to make deeper runs in the playoffs and even make the playoffs, because they haven't made that playoffs since they lost the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think that's a good point you just made about A.J. Terrell. Bit of a reach. I'm sure they really liked him. He was the 6th ranked cornerback via ESPN. He's still a really good player, but I think they had more of a glaring hole and need at the linebacker position last year, and even then they did still lose some linebackers. I know they lost Campbell to free agency. So I think they didn't really fill their number one need, but they got who they thought was probably the best defender on the board, which I disagree with, but we'll see how A.J. Terrell does with the Falcons.
And also, I think, and they also lost Vic Beasley this year to the Titans. So, I mean, yes. I think a linebacker is a more glaring need.
Yeah, for sure.
So with the 17th pick, Dallas Cowboys pick CeeDee Lamb out of Oklahoma, wide receiver. I mean, this is a very Cowboy-esque pick. I mean, they like flashy, they like something big, and they don't want a boring lineman. They want a nice player that will sell jerseys and put people in seats. I mean, it's not really a need for the Cowboys. I just think they did it just because they're the Cowboys.
Yeah, this is the cash cow that is Jerry Jones, and the cash cow that is the Dallas Cowboys, America's team. They have the most coverage every single year in and year out. They have the most primetime games year in and year out. I bet the second he comes to Dallas, Jerry Jones goes, CeeDee Lamb, I want to unretire number 88, and I want you to wear number 88. I can't even imagine the amount of jersey sales a number 88 CeeDee Lamb Dallas Cowboys jersey is going to get next year if he does decide to go with that number 88. And it really is a glamour move. I think it's a move where they also showed Dak Prescott, we really want you to be our franchise guy, but we just don't want you to pay. We don't want to pay you all that money. So we're surrounding you with great talent where you could look really good and play really good. So that's good. But again, I don't know if this was the smartest pick for the Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb is a great player. A lot of people's number one wide receivers. A lot of people had him as a top 5, top 10 talent in the NFL. I think it's another situation where I don't think the Cowboys expected to go wide receiver in the first round, expected to go CeeDee Lamb with that 17th pick. But I think once Jerry Jones saw CeeDee Lamb fell to them, he had to take him.
Yeah, I think secondary was a more glaring need for the Cowboys, but I think at this point in the draft there wasn't much secondary players around, or really good secondary players, ones that you can wait for the second round to pick. So for the 17th pick in the draft, I think CeeDee Lamb is great. I think he fell. I think he's better than the 17th pick, but if I was the Cowboys, I would have tried to trade down later in the first, if not trade out of the first round like you saw the Patriots do. And I would have just tried to get that defense to be better, because that was kind of the downfall of their team last year. So with the 18th pick, the Miami Dolphins, from the Steelers, they picked Austin Jackson, tackle out of USC. I mean, I don't know. I didn't watch that much Austin Jackson, but I know that they had 2 on their roster. They just drafted 2 of hopefully their franchise quarterback for the foreseeable future. So they want to solidify that tackle position and protect him for his whole career. And I think that hopefully that's what they got here with Austin Jackson.
Yeah, people are saying Austin Jackson is a bit of a reach. I love when Roger Goodell, before the pick, he gets so excited like he's a little boy and turns to the Dolphins fans and goes, "Good news for Tua, good news for Tua." And then right then and there, everybody was like, oh, they're drafting an offensive tackle. They're going to get a tackle. Yeah. So they get that tackle in Austin Jackson. And theoretically, it's a really good pick. We'll see how Austin Jackson is as a player. Again, going off of what you said, I don't really know how good he is. I didn't look at Austin Jackson, to be completely honest. I have to watch some more tape on him. I know the notes right here say Jackson is inconsistent, but 2019 Notre Dame tape shows the good and the bad on the pass protection, and that pass protection is going to be the most important aspect of Austin Jackson's game. So we'll see how he does on that end.
Yeah. So with the 19th pick, the Raiders, from the Bears, they select Damon Arnette, the third Ohio State player. So this is the third year in a row that there's multiple Ohio State players taken. Actually, no, I shouldn't say that. That's wrong. Scrap that. Forget that. But I think this is kind of a reach for the Raiders. I know Damon Arnette, he had a second round grade on him, so they could have got him in the second round, but they didn't have a second round pick. So I think that they knew they wanted this guy really badly, and that's why they picked him so early. I think they were scared that they were going to lose him to another team. Peter King said that he has the lowest passer rating in all of college football.
Wow.
Against him. So I think the Raiders saw that this is someone they can put on an island and he'll do his job. So I think that's why they picked him. Yeah,
this is a Mike Mayock pick. This is what you're going to see out of the Mike Mayock Raiders era. You're going to see year in and year out. Their first round pick isn't going to necessarily be a first round talent, or where they draft on the board. It's not necessarily going to be where that player was expected to go. I think the Raiders and Mike Mayock, they don't care about what everyone else says and the projections of where the players are going to go. They really follow their big board religiously, and they pick who they want to pick. You saw them pick Clelin Ferrell last year with a top 5 pick, where he wasn't even expected to go top 15. So you see that again with Damon Arnette at Ohio State. I trust Mike Mayock. I think Arnette is going to be a really good player for the Raiders system. They're getting, who's the returning player from injury last year?
John Abram.
Yeah, John Abram. So they're getting John Abram back. So this should be an improved Raiders team where at some point they're on the outside looking into a playoff spot. They kind of sputtered down the road. So we'll see how good the Raiders could do next year.
Yeah. So with the 20th pick, the Jaguars from the Rams, they picked Caleb Von Chasen, linebacker out of LSU. Again, he's a great player, but I don't necessarily think it was what the Jaguars need. I think they need a lineman, but at this point in the draft, I think the lineman stock is kind of depleted with the players available. So I think this is just kind of like they just picked what they needed. He's a great player, and they're stuck in their old ways of picking defense.
Yeah, he's a really good player. He was one of my favorite linebackers in this draft. I thought maybe the Cowboys or another team or the Falcons with a need at linebacker should have maybe drafted him. But again, yeah, they're a little stagnant with this pick. I don't see them getting too much better. I think a big narrative going around with the Jaguars are, where are those pieces that they want to trade? Where are they going to go? Where are they going to get out of Leonard Fournette, and where are they going to get out of Ngakoue? First round already went by, so they're not getting any first rounders out of them. I think Ngakoue is worth a first round pick. So if they trade him later for a second, third, fourth, I think that's going to be really bad for their team. So we'll see what they do. They're picking defense, so they're obviously looking to move on with some of those defensive players that didn't work out. I think we can see Myles Garrett on the trade block pretty soon as well. Kind of rebuild that defense with new young players and maybe flip those defensive players that they have right now for offensive talent. That's what I would do, at least if I was the Jaguars looking at these picks.
Yeah. So with the 21st overall pick, Philadelphia Eagles select Jalen Reagor, wide receiver at TCU. I think this is the Eagles picked for a need. They needed a wide receiver. They've had problems for countless years with drop balls and inconsistency at the wide receiver position. Jalen Reagor, I think he's kind of a bigger body. He's 200 pounds. He's a little shorter, so he's kind of more compact. He's a little slower. He ran like a 4.7, so not blazing speed, but I think he'll be a great possession receiver. I know that Justin Jefferson was available and T. Higgins was available, but you saw T. Higgins dropped, and I think the Eagles were higher on this guy than the other two that I just previously mentioned.
Yeah, I just don't like this Eagles pick right here. I just think it's a big reach. I think Jalen Reagor, really good player. A lot of people like him. A lot of people thought he was a big sleeper coming into this draft. Just didn't have the college production to warrant a first-round pick. And I don't think his physicals, he's 5'11". He does have good speed, but not incredible, blazing, take the top off the defense every single time you're running a vertical route type speed. He still is really fast in that aspect, but the Eagles don't have the best track record at developing those wide receivers too. He was the 9th ranked wide receiver per ESPN. So I think it's a bit of a reach here. They really did need a wide receiver. I love the Eagles picking a wide receiver. I just don't necessarily love the Eagles picking Jalen Reagor here, because I think they could have waited till their day 2 selection to pick Reagor. And if Reagor was gone, I think you can get a guy like Denzel Mims or somebody of that nature who is comparable to Jalen Reagor in terms of talent.
With the 22nd overall pick, the Minnesota Vikings from the Buffalo Bills select Justin Jefferson, wide receiver, LSU. I think this is a really good pick. They lost Diggs. They traded him to the Bills, where they got this pick from. I think Jefferson's someone who's really good. I think he's going to have a really successful NFL career. He's great. He's great for someone to pair up with Adam Thielen and have another weapon for Kirk Cousins. At the wide receiver position, they were kind of lacking. Last year, they were lacking behind Thielen and Diggs. So I think, and then if they lost Diggs, so they just had one solid guy. So I think filling that role with another guy is a great pick.
Yeah, this is a phenomenal move. I think the Vikings are a team where it's great if they have 2 really good wide receivers. And I think Justin Jefferson is really good. One of my favorite wide receivers in this entire draft class. So fun to watch with Joe Burrow and that LSU offense last year. But just the style in which the Vikings play, they're going to have games where Kirk Cousins throws 12 passes. They're going to have games where he throws 15 passes. So I don't think it's vital, and I think it's rather foolish to have 2 wide receivers getting paid $10+ million a year. So I really do like them getting rid of Stephon Diggs and replacing him with Justin Jefferson, who still a really good wide receiver and costs much less. So just from a team building standpoint, this move makes complete sense. Smart of them to trade off Diggs for Jefferson, just as the Kinlaw pick was really smart, just from a team building perspective. So I really love the Vikings and the 49ers. I think they arguably won the first round because they also had multiple first round picks.
Yeah, I think this is a really good. Like I said earlier, it's a good pick, and I think it's a similar to the 49ers, and I think that they're trying to keep their cap low, and they also fleeced the Buffalo Bills with that Stefon Diggs trade.
They really did. You saw just a couple days earlier a better wide receiver in DeAndre Hopkins get traded for a second-round pick and a contract dump, and then you have to acquire Stefon Diggs, not as good of a wide receiver as Hopkins is, for a first-round pick. A bit puzzling to me, to say the least, but we'll see how Diggs does in Buffalo. Really don't like the fit in Buffalo. Diggs is a wide receiver who I love. Diggs coming out of Maryland, so good. And he's a really good NFL player, but he loves being involved in the offense. And you saw a lot last year. The Bills had trouble hitting their wide receivers. So I think the same problems that arose with him in his time with the Vikings are going to come right back up with the Buffalo Bills. So I don't really like that Stefon Diggs marriage with the Bills, just to get into it a little bit. But
so with the 23rd pick, originally the Patriots, but they traded out of the first round. We have the Los Angeles Chargers picking Kenneth Murray out of Oklahoma. I think this is a really good pick.
Yeah.
Kenneth Murray was one of the most underrated players in the draft. I think he's really good. He's athletic. He can do a lot on the field. I think he's going to be a stud for the Chargers for the foreseeable future, and like an anchor on their defense, because they have, despite quarterback, they have a great roster, and they're just adding more talent to that roster.
They really do. I know you're not going to love hearing this, but I think a lot of losses were contributed to Phillip Rivers last year, to be completely honest with you. I think that one missing piece to their team is quarterback. So I think with this 23rd pick, they did see the New England Patriots had this pick originally. They saw Kenneth Murray, who was probably so high on their draft board. I'm sure he was a top 5 on their draft board. He's a really good linebacker. If you value that inside linebacker position, he's one of the best players in that draft. Kenneth Murray is a really good football player. So I think they saw him still available and said, wow, we got to go get him. That defense is scary. I would not want to play that defense if I was a quarterback or any offensive player. They have Joey Bosa, they have Ingram, they have Derwin James, and now they have Murray. That's a really scary, talented defense.
Yeah, for sure. So with the 24th overall pick, New Orleans Saints pick Cesar Ruiz, who is guard / center from Michigan. Again, I think this is someone that might have be able to be picked in the second round.
Yeah. I
think the Saints don't want to chance him being picked by another team, so they land in the spot. They like the guy. They need a center, and they just picked him. I think that's pretty much what happened there.
Yeah, I know Cesar Ruiz said he's born on this earth to play the center position. I think his rookie year, it would be very much to ask from him to play center for Drew Brees. It's really hard to play center for these veteran guys who have so many pre-snap reads and so many pre-snap adjustments. I see a more practical fit for him at guard right away, immediately, because you need a lot of communication and a lot of work between your center and your quarterback. So especially with COVID-19 and the shortened offseason and less time to prepare, I think it is less likely that we do see him at center, but he was the best center in the draft. So if they are picking him to be a center, he's going to be a good player. Bit of a reach, but fills a position of need. They have a really talented roster. They're in win now mode. They need an offensive lineman. I think any other position right now would not be too smart of the Saints to pick, so I really like them picking a lineman.
Yeah, I just think that their team there's no other really big gaping holes in their roster, so I think this is just something that they need to fill.
Yeah.
So the 25th pick, the 49ers from the Vikings, they picked Brandon Ayuk, a wide receiver from Arizona State. Again, I think it's a really good pick for the 49ers. They lost Emmanuel Sanders. They need to fill that wide receiver role. I think Ayuk is very underrated, and not a lot of people were high on him on their wide receiver rankings. I think the 49ers with this pick, I think they're really winning the first round. They won the first.
Yeah, the 49ers have had a great first round. I mean, they've had a great 2-3 off seasons in a row now. Brandon Ayuk, our boy, he's good. I want him on the show one day, but he's going to be really good. Love Brandon Ayuk. Big rooting for you. I don't like the 49ers, but I think Brandon Ayuk, all kidding aside, 6 foot, 205, good speed, great body control. He's really good. I was looking up Brandon Ayuk highlights. So good at just tracking the ball down and really fooling that defender. Good route runner, too. I really like that Brandon Ayuk move. I think he's a great fit with the 49ers, but I think the Eagles really should have picked him when they picked Reagor. I think Ayuk is better than Reagor, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think that the 49ers, I think their mantra is just to stay young. They're shipping off a lot of old guys or letting a lot of old guys walk in free agency, and then they're re-signing or drafting young people.
Really smart.
So I think this is the most talked about pick in the NFL draft with the 26th pick. The Packers from the Texans, which the Texans got from the Dolphins. Packers select Jordan Love, quarterback out of Utah State. So this is just huge. You saw it's a lot of historical context. You saw that Packers picked Rodgers when they had Favre on their roster, which kind of ticked both quarterbacks off.
Yeah.
And we saw when they picked Jordan Love, he kind of looked pissed off. So you definitely saw he got ticked off. And you see Rodgers ticked off. You know Rodgers is ticked off just because of his personality. So this is kind of just putting a restriction on Rodgers, saying that you got 3 years, you better do the most with these 3 years. I think the Packers should have picked a wide receiver or some sort of offense skilled position player. They haven't done that in quite some time. Because, I mean, they have a big gaping hole at wide receiver. I mean, they have Devontae Adams, but after that they have Valdez-Scantling, St. Brown, Geronimo Allison. It's not much they don't have much great players there.
Yeah, there's so much to get into with this pick. I know so many Green Bay Packers fans are so upset about this pick, but I know a lot of Green Bay Packers fans are kind of joking, and I agree with it. The Packers GM was thinking, what's one player where I could pick that would piss off Aaron Rodgers the very most? And that's absolutely Jordan Love. I mean, they couldn't have picked another player that would have made him more mad. I know he went on the Pat McAfee show the night of the draft. I think he was there for the first 5 to 10 picks. And he was getting into, I would have loved to see the Packers draft a skill position player. We haven't drafted a skill position player in really 15 years. But when you really look at it, I would have liked to seen them pick a win now mode player. They won 13 games, for crying out loud, last season.
They're in the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous that they're not trying to pick players to win now, in my opinion. But another aspect of me says he was the second-ranked quarterback on my board, at least. I think Jordan Love has a lot of upside. I pleaded with the NFL to have Jordan Love get picked by a team where he was going to sit and develop. No other team that Jordan Love could have got picked on would he have less expectations to play right away than the Green Bay Packers. So that's great. I know a lot of people are saying Aaron Rodgers is going to be the worst mentor in the world, and I hear some people saying Aaron Rodgers is going to be a great mentor. I know a lot of backup quarterbacks coming out of Green Bay, Brett Hundley, McGloin, I think his name is, but one of those guys. They said they really liked Aaron Rodgers and he was a good mentor. So we'll see how open Aaron Rodgers is to developing the future of the Packers. And I think it's just so important for the Packers organization. They're such a classic traditional organization. I think the most important thing isn't the coach, isn't the GM, it's the quarterback. The quarterback really represents that franchise. So I think I really appreciate the Packers seeing that the writing is on the wall with Aaron Rodgers. He does only have a couple years left. I think we saw the decline of Aaron Rodgers last season a little bit. I don't think he played to his Aaron Rodgers standard. So I think they're really preparing for the future. I think they over-prepare, which is so much better than teams like the Steelers and even the Patriots under-preparing with their franchise quarterback. I would have loved to see this move out of a team like the Steelers. So I really can't flag the Packers for really gearing for the future. But at the same time, you did just win 13 games. But I bet their coach really saw Jordan Love and said, I'm not going to see another guy like this in a couple of years, at least in the draft. So we got to go get him right now. So
yeah, I just think you're one game away from the the Super Bowl. You're in the NFC Championship game. You got to pick a player to help your roster to catapult them to the Super Bowl. I don't know why they're picking a quarterback that's not going to help your team for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, this is a pick where we'll know if it's a good or bad pick in hindsight. Yeah. I even saw Aaron Rodgers talking about it. I would argue this is worse for Jordan Love in terms of pressure, because when you have a guy sit for 3 years, his contract's almost up in his 4th year. So you're going to thrust Jordan Love into the starting role, maybe his 3rd or 4th year in the league. He has 1 or 2 bad games. He's out on the streets, and he's never going to get a lick of NFL football ever again. That's what happened to Aaron Rodgers. They threw Aaron Rodgers in after the 3rd or 4th year, and they said, you don't play at a top 10, top 5 quarterback level right now. We're just going to go and draft another quarterback. And we even saw after Aaron Rodgers' first season, they picked a quarterback in the 2nd round and the 7th round. So I think you can even make the argument that Jordan Love sitting for 3 years even adds more pressure to how good he's going to be. You know, you're never going to be good if you sat behind Aaron Rodgers all these years and you're still not ready. So I'm really rooting for Jordan Love. I honestly really like Jordan Love as a football player. He has a lot of holes in his game, but hopefully they can be kind of patched up with the Packers. And at the very least, what I would say to Packers fans that are really upset about this move, we've seen Aaron Rodgers get hurt in the past couple of years. At the very least, you upgraded your backup quarterback position. So that's a good part of this pick. But again, I would have liked to see them go skill position.
Yeah. So with the 27th pick in the NFL draft, the Seattle Seahawks picked Jordan Brooks, linebacker out of Texas Tech. I think this is a really good pick for the Seahawks. Over the past couple of years, you saw the demise of the Legion of Boom. And you can see the last 2 years, their defense has not been spectacular at all. It's been probably in the bottom half of the league. So I think they're kind of picking a new age linebacker here. He's fast. He's a tackling machine, and I think he'll be a great addition to their defense, and he'll be able to lead it. You can put him next to Bobby Wagner, and that's kind of a great 1-2 punch. You saw a great 1-2 punch in Carolina for a number of years with Kuechly and Thomas Davis.
Yeah, Jordan Brooks, he has a lot of wear and tear on him. Like you said, he's a tackling machine, which did really relegate him to some big hits in college football. He is a bit of an injury concern, but KJ Wright, Bobby Wagner, and then adding in Brooks. If Brooks is a good linebacker, you got the best linebacking core in the entire NFL right there in Seattle. So I really like that pick. Not necessarily a position of need. I would have liked to see, I really don't like this pick in the aspect of position of need. I think they need a lineman more than anything. I think we saw Russell Wilson run around way too much last year, and he was really having an MVP campaign. And I think his drop-off of the MVP campaign, even though Russell Wilson still had one of the best quarterback seasons last year, arguably the 2nd best, I think he started to get out of that MVP conversation because his game started to slip a little because he was getting hit so much and because he had to rush so much because of that offensive line. So I think that was their biggest need, and they did not fill it. At 27, I know a lot of offensive linemen were gone, but we saw Isaiah Wilson go 29. So I think they could have gotten him maybe at that 27 pick.
Yeah, I just think that they probably saw the linemen available and they weren't very high on any of them, so that's why I think they went with Brooks.
Yep.
So the 28th pick in the NFL draft, the Ravens select Patrick Queen, linebacker, LSU. This is a really great pick. I think he's going to be someone kind of because they lost C.J. Mosley to the Jets. I think he can fill that role of C.J. Mosley, or Mosley left 2 years ago, but this is a great addition to their defense. I think Patrick Queen's a great player. He's very similar to Devin White. with his speed. He's kind of the new age linebacker with his speed and his tackling ability. I think it's a really great pick for them.
Yeah, when we saw Queen, it took him a little while to really get into a solid starting role at LSU. It wasn't really until his last season, but when he was prompted as a starter, he made an immediate impact. He's a guy who I probably maybe overrated coming into this draft. I knew he wasn't going to go in the top 10, top 15. I really projected him to go later in the round. I had him as a top 10 talent. Patrick Queen is one of my favorite players in the draft. I even alluded to the fact that the Ravens could pick Patrick Queen as maybe their heir apparent to these great linebacker cores that they've had in the past. Suggs, they just let go of him at the beginning of the last season, and Suggs kind of moved around a little bit in the NFL last year, so he was old and he was kind of a situational player as it is. So picking Patrick Queen, I really like this pick. You saw they had so much trouble. I mean, their number one need, especially in that playoff game, was to stop the run. I mean, Derrick Henry ran all over them last year in that playoff game. So picking a inside linebacker to help stop that run, that's just what they need come playoff time. So I like that pick.
Yeah, I think they saw that, like you said, they got shellacked in the running game by Derrick Henry, and they really needed to fix that in order to put him onto the next level and be able to make a deeper Super Bowl run.
Yeah, and I think something with the Ravens, I wouldn't be surprised to see them trade up day 2 to pick one of the best wide receivers still available, because I still do think they have a big need at the wide receiver position. Now, just the nature of the Ravens offense, they're not going to be thrown around to their wide receivers too much. Those tight ends were more of a part of the passing game than those wide receivers, but they still do need the big-bodied guy to not only help block, but catch for Lamar Jackson. We saw a huge problem in the playoffs where all those drop passes by guys like Willie Snead, those skill position players around Lamar Jackson, really came up short and shrinked in the playoff moment, which was so disappointed. I was so disappointed to see that out of those Ravens players. So I think another thing that the Ravens could do come round 2 is pick one of the best running backs in their draft. I really like Mark Ingram, but he's getting older. He's getting up there in age. He's not an every down back anymore. So I think drafting either a wide receiver or a running back round 2 for the Ravens would be ideal.
Yeah. So with the 29th pick, the Tennessee Titans select Isaiah Wilson, tackle out of Georgia. I mean, DeAndre Swift, when he was at Georgia, he had a great year because of his outstanding linemen. And I think Isaiah Wilson is really great. I mean, he's not as good as some of the other talent in the draft and you saw them get picked extremely early. But I think the Titans, they have Derrick Henry, kind of the leader of their team. They just poured a bunch of money into Ryan Tannehill, so I think they needed to pick that lineman position to protect those two, because they don't want those to go to waste, and they know that they can make a deep playoff run like they did last year.
Yeah, I'm really happy for Isaiah Wilson falling to 29. It's going to be a blessing for him. If personally I was a offensive tackle going into this draft, I would pray to God I fell to the 29th pick to the Tennessee Titans. No other team would I want to be on as a lineman than the Tennessee Titans. Not only do you have your head coach be an ex-lineman, loves linemen, and Mike Vrabel, but you have that bruising style of play. You know, offensive linemen usually like running the ball more than they like passing the ball, and they are going to do just that. They're going to run the ball. They're going to slow down the game, and they're really going to bruise with that great offensive line they're building. Not only that, but that great running back that they have in Derrick Henry. So good at just lowering his shoulder and getting yards. So really happy for Isaiah Wilson with that pick. He's huge, 6'7", 350. I mean, he has great potential. So I really like that Isaiah Wilson pick.
Yep. So with the 30th pick, the Dolphins from the Packers, they select cornerback from Auburn, Noah. I don't even know how to pronounce this.
Yeah, good luck pronouncing
We'll just go with Noah. It's a good pick for the Dolphins. Excuse me. I mean, they signed Byron Jones. They have Xavier Howard.
Yeah.
Really building up that secondary, and I think Ryan Flores, he's doing a great job building up the whole roster. I can see in the next 2 years. I mean, in 2 years in the future, 3 years, the Dolphins can be one of the premier teams in the league. They're really doing a great job building up their whole team. I'm really impressed.
Yeah, Brian Flores, quick note, his kids were adorable on draft day. But going back to this pick, yeah, the Dolphins are one of the big winners. I touched upon the 49ers and the Vikings a little bit. You can argue right there in that top three for winners coming out of day one are the Dolphins. Not necessarily a position of need, but he's going to be really good for the Dolphins. A bit of a reach here potentially. I know he was not that high ranked up on the cornerbacks, but I think every single year in the draft, more than any position, cornerback is kind of ranked differently among preference. So a lot of the times we do see picks that we will perceive as being a reach, and this is one of them. But at the end of the first round, you start to dabble into those second, third round talents where you think they're better than they're projected to be. So good pick by the Dolphins. And getting into the next pick, you want to announce that? Another cornerback.
Just a quick thing about Noah. I think that the Dolphins, with Byron Jones, he's a super athletic, like set the broad jump record. Noah's parents were track stars, so I think the Dolphins are trying to build this really athletic secondary.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point.
So with the 31st pick, the Vikings from the 49ers select Jeff Gadney, cornerback TCU. So we have the second TCU player in this draft. I think the Vikings lost Xavier Rhodes to the Colts. I mean, Xavier Rhodes didn't have that great of a year, but so they picked Jeff Gladney to fill the role of Xavier Rhodes. I think he's more of a physical cornerback. He can make a lot of tackles, and I think Mike Zimmer's more. I think he's more focused on the defensive side of the ball. I think he said, "All right, fine, I'll give you your wide receiver. Just let me focus on my defense after I make that wide receiver pick in Justin Jefferson earlier in the draft." So I think he really wanted to get a defensive player, and I think they got a great player here.
Yeah, I really like Jeff Gladney. I think he's one of the best cornerbacks in this draft class. I think he's a player where is he going to be all over the field? Is he going to be making 12, 13 tackles a game with 5 interceptions, 6 interceptions a year? Not necessarily, but I think he's a player where you can put him on an island, have him cover one of the best wide receivers on the opposing team, and he's going to hold his own, and you're not going to really have to worry about his side of the field. So whenever you can add a player like that late in the first round, I think that is huge for the Vikings. Really love what the Vikings are doing, not only this offseason, but in the draft again. So good pick with Jeff Gladney.
And to close out the draft, the Kansas City Chiefs, Super Bowl champions, adding to their outstanding roster, they get Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back LSU. I think this is an outstanding pick. He's not someone he can run the ball an incredible amount. He's a great running back, but I think he's really good and he excels in the passing game. And the Chiefs are going to throw the ball a ton during the game. So I think just having someone that can come out of the backfield and catch the ball. I mean, you have to, when you're the opposing defense, you have to cover Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman, Travis Kelce, and now Edwards-Helaire. So I mean, they're just a matchup nightmare. And I think it's a really good pick for the Chiefs.
Yeah, probably only the glaring weakness that the Chiefs had on that offensive side of the ball was their running back position. They didn't have a running back run for more than 500 yards last season. I thought LaShawn McCoy was a shell of his former self last year with the Chiefs. I think he didn't play in the Super Bowl for personal reasons. I'm not even sure. But they definitely need a running back. I think it was a pretty predictable pick that they were going to go their best running back off the board with this 32 pick. Not a surprise to not see any of the other running backs go just yet. I think those running backs, again, one of my biggest takeaways is that now that ever, the running back position really is a depleted value position. But getting Clyde Edwards-Helaire in that Andy Reid offense with his imagination and his ability to really get the most out of guys and put them in a position to really succeed, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be really good for the Chiefs. Really excited to see him play with Patrick Mahomes. And he's a sleeper for fantasy too. If a little fantasy advice out there, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, if he's dropping, I would absolutely pick him as a running back too, or as a flex player going into next season.
Yeah, definitely. He's going to put up a crazy amount of points with that offense.
Yep.
So just overall, yeah, like first round, I think pretty much every team had a great draft. I don't think there's really any poor picks like you said earlier. So we're just gonna go into kind of the second round of day two. Second round starts in an hour, as the time of our recording.
Yep.
So we're gonna look at which players, the best players available. So obviously, first off, you have kind of DeAndre Swift, the running back that a lot of people were saying was the best running back in the whole draft. He's still available.
Yep.
I mean, kind of not much of a surprise to me. I think he wasn't that great. I think he's a bit overrated.
Yeah.
He was running behind a huge offensive lineman, and you saw two of his linemen that were blocking for him got picked in the first round.
Yeah, that says a lot.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to escape the second round. I think some team's going to pick him. But
I agree.
I'm not much of a shock here.
Yeah, I think we're going to see day two of the draft, which is today on Friday. Not only in the second round, but in the third round, I think we're going to see at least 3 or 4 running backs go. And I think we're going to see at least 3 or 4 wide receivers go. So I think day two is really always the day of those skill position players, trying to get those best game-changing players off the board as quickly as possible. So I think you're going to see a lot of high-profile guys kind of get drafted here. Going into that, we have Xavier McKinney, the safety out of Alabama. He's still there. AJ Espinosa, I know he was kind of a projected first-round pick. He slid. Not a lot of edge rushers, to my surprise, got picked. A lot of just traditional linebackers, more so than edge guys, got picked, which is a bit surprising coming out of the first round. Another edge, we have Zach Bond coming out of Wisconsin. And then another high-profile player in college football last year, T. Higgins, played with Clemson. And then we have Trevon Diggs.
Yeah, I think AJ Epinesa and Zach Bond, I think those are two Patriot-esque players. I can really see the Patriots picking either those guys depending on where they fall into the draft. Because you saw the Patriots looking at the second round pick. They have the 5th pick in the second round. So I can see either of those players being around at that pick. So I think they're going to take that guy. T. Higgins, I think I can see him go to the Colts at 2. The Colts, they kind of have a glaring need at wide receiver. Outside of T.Y., they drop off in production a considerable about. For last year, because T.Y. was out for most of last year. For last year, they had 0 wins when T.Y. was not in the lineup. So that says a lot. And I think having T. Higgins would really help their offense. I mean, they have Zach Pascal.
Pascal.
Pascal. He was pretty productive last year with T.Y. not in the lineup.
Yeah, for sure. And looking at these teams who are picking at the top of round 2, you have the Colts, you have the Giants, you have the Patriots, you have the Panthers, you even have the Dolphins, arguably, and then you have Houston with that pick from Arizona at pick 40. All these teams need wide receivers. Still a lot of talented wide receivers. Denzel Mims, I touched upon a little 6'3" guy. I thought maybe the Eagles should have picked Mims, or even a bigger guy, Michael Pittman Jr. out of USC. A lot of players say those two guys are two of the biggest sleepers in the draft too. Pittman could flat out play coming out of USC. So I think we're going to see those wide receivers go off the board pretty quickly here. Even Chase Claypool coming out of Notre Dame, another 6'4" guy. I think somebody like that, one of the 3 guys I named, they're going to go off the board early. I could see a team like the Baltimore Ravens trading up for a guy like that, or maybe even the Green Bay Packers after having a discussion with a very disgruntled Aaron Rodgers would say, okay, we're going to pick a wide receiver for you second round here.
And I think someone that's really good is kind of an underrated player, D tackle at TCU, Ross Blacklock. I think really good. I think a lot of teams should consider him more. He's D tackle. He's a little bit below the tier of Derek Brown and Javon Kinlaw, but I think he would be a really great steal in the second round.
Yeah, another position that hasn't gotten picked yet that I do think is going to start to go in day 2 and then day 3 of the NFL draft is that tight end position. We see the highest ranked tight end be Cole Kmet out of Notre Dame. Huge frame, 6'6", 260. He's not the most polished player, but I think we're going to start to see those positions like the tight end position and then like the guard position, like the center position, where they're not at the upper echelon of importance. Same with running back. There's that word again you love. But they're going to start to go off the board because even though position-wise they're not that important, just as the pure player aspect, they can be a first-round talent.
Yeah, and then with all the other notable players, do you think that we're going to see someone like Jalen Hurts or Jacob Eason or Jake Fromm come in the second round?
It's hard to say. If I was to guess how many quarterbacks are going to go in the second round, I would say around 1. Honestly, I don't think a lot of teams are going to go into the second round to get a quarterback just because there's a lot of depth in this draft. A lot of players highly rated, a lot of players that slipped out of the first round that I do think we're going to see go to round 2. So I don't think that many quarterbacks are going to get picked in round 2. I'd be a bit surprised. But in round 3, I could see guys like Jalen Hurts, Jacob Eason, Jake Fromm, maybe even start to go off the board here. I could see a team getting a little bit nervous at the end of the second round, thinking Jalen Hurts or somebody like that is going to get picked, and some team trading into a position to get Jalen Hurts. So I think if a quarterback does get picked in the second round, I think it's going to be from a team who either falls into their lap perfectly or a team that trades up.
Yeah, I think in the second round, I think it's either going to be Jacob Eason or Hurts, not Fromm. I think someone might pick Eason as a project or someone to sit behind one of their old quarterbacks, like maybe the Steelers might have him or pick him. But I think someone might pick Hurts strictly on his athletic ability and see where he can move around the whole field. I know he's not – Jalen Hurts doesn't really want to do that. He says he's a quarterback, but I think one team might pick him and try to convince him.
Yeah, and that right there is why I'm a little bit hesitant to say we're going to see a lot of quarterbacks go off the board in day 2 because teams are very hesitant to pick those backup quarterback type players in the second round. You want to pick a starter in the second round, in the third round. So unless you have a guy like Jalen Hurts or a guy like Jacob Eason, who a team strongly believes could be a starting quarterback one day, I think the backup quarterbacks aren't going to start to go off the board until round 4, round 5, round 6.
Yeah, that's true. So there you have it. There's our reaction from the first round and our thoughts on the second round. Excited to see the second round and the third round tonight and then tomorrow for the rest of the draft. Hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see you in the next episode.